This week on the Fifth Trooper podcast.
You both are great. Well, both of you and
not you, Nick.
No, I deserve it. I walked away.
Welcome to the Fifth Trooper podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Fifth Trooper podcast, where we talk Star Wars Legion. My name is Jay Shalansky, and today we're doing a special pre-AdeptiCon show, and joining me is Evan and Nick, and then also Doug, or AKA Sploosh on the Discord channel. Doug went, it was fourth, right, Doug? You went fourth at LVO with a 5-0.
Yes.
Nice.
So, yeah, it was... so let's talk about that a little bit, because I was at LVO as well. How really was the go in that fifth round? I guess number one. Like, how tired were you?
So I found the fourth round actually to be the tiring round, where my opponent and I both. I would say if you were watching from, not one of us, you'd probably look like two drunk people. It's like we both, my opponent and I were kind of talking. It's like, man, I don't know. Like I kind of don't care if I lose anymore. That attitude.
Yeah.
But we knew we were there for a reason, and we were both 3-0, so we wanted to keep playing, of course. But and my opponent ended up making it into the cut anyway. So there was kind of that talk of like, even if you lose, like it's not so bad. Yeah. So it took the edge off. It was like a very casual game. But in retrospect, I was glad I put my effort in and didn't just like concede or something, because now seeing that the undefeateds are kind of on a higher place than not, I'm glad I didn't give up. But then by the fifth round, it was more like a euphoria of like, oh wow, we're here,
Yeah.
And so I felt like that kept the edge off as well. It's just the tournament in general was such a almost casual feeling event, even though everyone was trying really hard. Everyone was so like low key, and you would never really argue. It's like, what do you think? Is this in sight, or can we work this out? And there was never like a lot of arguing or anything. It was great. It was such a good time.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I mean, I ran into a couple guys. Number one, my fourth game was probably the hardest game too, and we were both exhausted. But like, I played Nima in round one, and he ended up going top 12. And there was a couple things during our game where we were both like, well, if you want to take that back, man, like that's cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like and that's really different from past games I've played. And it's very interesting how that works with this group.
Absolutely. I've played a lot of different games, and this one was the most relaxed, and I didn't go to this tournament expecting to be a winner. I just wanted to have some fun. So it was a good.
It's always a happy coincidence too, right?
Yeah. And so anyone listening that's scared of maybe like more, organized events, like don't be. It's such a good time.
Yeah, and I'll say I think it's a lot of it is our group, right? And I think that's the same thing coming into AdeptiCon. If you're listening to this and this is your first big tournament and you're trying to go to AdeptiCon to get the invite, everybody that's playing for the most part, right? Let's caveat that and say 99%, right, are going to be very cool and laid back. And so, I didn't feel any pressure either. I mean, just the normal pressures of wanting to win, but nothing like all my opponents were super cool, and everybody just seemed like they were just happy to be there.
Absolutely. For my first round opponent, I was writing a little thoughts to not forget the experience. And literally on my first thing I wrote about the guy was happy to be here. And it was such a great first game, because you don't know what to expect in your first game, right? You walk in and you're like, I don't know what this is going to be like. I have nothing to reference it to. And so awesome. I don't know if you want me to go into detail on any of that. But,
let's talk about LVO a little bit.
My first round opponent, his name was Dan Turner, and what was kind of funny is on the badge I wrote sploosh/Doug, because I don't tell anyone my name is Doug, online. But the guy goes, Sploosh? He's like, I remember I watched your game on Endless's Twitch. And I was like, really? I just didn't assume. I assumed no one's watching that stuff, But that was like a great first start. And then he told me he's from Missouri, and we talked about his experience with the game. And he, like I said, he was just happy to be there, and it made the first round so chill. And at the end, I was also really impressed that he said, what do you think I could have done better? Which is one of those things that maybe a lot of people don't say that enough. And I've learned my lesson from other games not to just tell people like you should have done this or whatever, without them asking for it. But it was such a good start to the day.
That's awesome.
So just a side note, I actually played him second round.
There you
So
go. Okay.
yeah, and he was like, he was really excited to meet you. He was like, I just met Sploosh, like he's a really nice guy. And I was like, oh yeah, I was supposed to say hi to him, and like I kept trying to find you during the tournament. It was just because, like you said, like most of these tournaments that I've gone to, like somebody will come up and introduce themselves. Like if you were to come up and say, hey, I'm Doug, I'd be like, I don't know who you are. Like, you know what I mean? But if you were like, oh, hey, I'm Sploosh, then I'm like, oh man, what's up? And it's just really, really funny how that works. But yeah, he seemed genuinely excited, and he was a super nice guy, and he was learning as he was going, and it was really cool.
Yep.
So I'm sorry, go ahead. So your second round.
Well, the next guy, Robert Wang, he was also super friendly. He's from California. So like I would say with he's actually one of the games that I sweated the most, because he was running RTs with repairs. And I don't know, it was one of those games where I never played against something like that, and I had to sort of like invent my strategy on the fly, which is never what you want to be doing when you're in any kind of competitive event. You want to hopefully have the plan before the event, but you're going to get some, like in Legion, there's people who are going to be creative and come up with something you've never seen before, and that was one of those games. And it was also on a really wacky map. I don't know if you saw it, but there's a route map where there was really like no line of sight, but there was a lot of heavy cover. But I was running 3 snowtroopers, and they don't want the no hiding places situation. So it was a really tough game, and it came down to us just running to this tree, because key positions to I basically got him by 1 activation. And then right after, he's like, hey man, you got plans for lunch? Are you here with anybody? And I kind of said no. And he's like, oh, you got to come with me. I have a whole bunch of guys. We can go get lunch together. I was like, wow, that's so nice of him. I was like, actually, I'm going to have lunch with my wife. And he's like, well, wait, that counts as you're here with somebody. And I was like, well, I thought you meant in the event. But yeah, so I didn't end up going out with him. But I ran into him a bunch throughout the day, and he was always like super positive, and we, how you doing and all that stuff. So it was, again, another great game with a really cool guy. So, and after that, I played Austin Catling, who he said he was from the United Kingdom, and he definitely had the accent. He was there with his wife, and it was kind of crazy. I've never played a game of anything ever where the wife was sitting there the whole time. And it kind of felt like if I make this guy lose, I feel kind of guilty. Like he's got an audience here. But he was actually the only, I guess, other guy playing Palpatine. And apparently I beat him on points, and it came down to him just not killing a leader at the end. I beat him by like 10 points. It was the closest game I had. And apparently he was the only Palp loss of the whole event. But I was sweating that game too. That was crazy. And then the other game was Jeff Miltier, which I believe was from California or Vegas. And that was the crazy, like, we're both a bunch of drunk people game. And that basically came down to I suicided Boba Fett into get the middle box. And then he just took sniper shot after sniper shot. He used the emergency stims and basically died with the box right in front of my army. And then that pretty much we could call the game at that point. I mean, we went a few more rounds, but the writing was on the wall. Like Boba sacrificed himself for a box, and ended up taking that one. So
not all heroes.
He's got a little cape.
The littlest of hero capes.
And then you guys can watch the last game. It's on YouTube from Sean Morris, which I didn't know who he was at the time, but he's from Canada, and I guess he does some media stuff like this. I guess I think he paints. He told me that.
So he runs the terrain studio. So he does tons of terrain, and now he actually, little shout out to them. him and two of the other guys that were in the top 12 at Vegas, they started their own podcast as well. So,
Wow.
yeah, Legion Academy is the name of the podcast. So yeah, he's a good dude. I love Sean.
Yeah. So it's a lot of the behind the scenes was so amazing too. They did such a good job of, it's not so much hype, but like the way he announced things and had the group come together and
Mm-hmm.
pictures and the prizes. It's just that was like I was saying, the euphoria. I feel like once those 4 rounds ended, it was a big like weight off your shoulders. And in other games I've played, sometimes just getting top 8, you feel like I already did it. Like
Yeah.
and in this case 12, but I just the huge weight off my shoulders of just like I can. And it was a lot of it because the tournament organizers were so friendly and so positive. It was just so great.
So let me ask you this: Are you this is going to be a double part question. So number one, are you playing the same list at Adepticon? And number two, are you comfortable talking about what you're playing?
I would say I'm playing the same list basically. I moved some things around.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think there's any massive secrets. It's going to be Boba Veer still.
Yeah.
I've added some recon intels, and I took
That's a good move.
Hunter out of there.
Mm-hmm.
The logic is that I don't think Hunter's well positioned yet. Once we see more stuff, I think it'll come back. But
Yep.
and then the intels because of all these Pathfinders and maybe the wild card Jin out there, and you got to be prepared for that. So
I agree 100%, and I think it's funny how this game's been working, right? Because we'll see things, upgrades or gear slots that pop up, and we're like, well, okay, that's nice, but I don't understand what it's for, like Recon Intel. And then all of a sudden you see Pathfinders and Jin, and you're like, oh, now I know what Recon Intel's for.
right, yeah. There's a version of the list with Palpatine that I've been playing a little bit, but I don't feel comfortable with it, and I actually think Palpatine might struggle against the Pathfinder and all that stuff. So I just don't feel. And I will say too, the entire reason I'm playing this game originally was Boba Fett and speeder bikes. Don't really play the speeder bikes anymore, but that's from my X-wing background. And then I knew they were going to make Boba Fett. That you can't do Star Wars without Boba Fett.
Yeah,
so.
right.
I'm literally wearing a Boba Fett hoodie right now. So Team Boba Fett, I'm going to play him until I can't anymore.
So let me, what has been, I know I don't know how often you get to play a Homer on TTS, but what has been your toughest matchup? Has it been mirror matches? Has it been rebel lists? What's been your toughest matchup with your list?
I don't know about tough matchup, but if I see Luke Skywalker, I'm not happy. He's just so evil. It's you. Even when you beat him, you feel like it's because it was a skinnier teeth. Like you had that whipcord at the perfect moment, and you knew, and you can't let them bait you on it. You can't let them. They'll get you to play it early and then save their best cards, and so it's always stressful. And the Leia bombardment can be really horrifying sometimes.
Yeah, it can be real feels bad.
Yeah, that card is rough, man. But that's about it. I'm always scared of like the random like RTs or something, even though I have the DLTs and Veers and Boba, which is pretty good impact. It's just, I don't know. That makes me a little nervous. Palpatine is also a scary monster too. If you let him get exactly the right situation, like he wants to play like key positions and he doesn't want to be on Long March, and if you let him have what he wants, it's not good. So that's a lot of hoping the cards work out for you.
Yeah, and I think so. My estimation is you're gonna see at Adepticon probably both in the Last Chance and in High Command. I think there's going to be a lot of Veers Boba lists. I think there's going to be a lot of Pathfinders. I don't know about Jin. I think you'll see a few Jin lists, like Jin Luke or Jin Leia with some Pathfinders, but I think people are finding that the Pathfinders are stronger than Jin is at this point. And so I think those are going to be the two big lists if I had to guess. Probably Wonder Twins with Pathfinders and Veers Boba.
Yeah, you're reminding me. I'm really, really afraid of the what is it? Recover the supplies. I'm still gonna play it, but probably not with the new lists I've been testing for Invader League, which Invader League's exciting. But yeah, I'm leaving it in. I might even be crazy to do that, but we'll see. I'm really scared you're just gonna have that game where someone grabs a box and runs away and you just lose, but you know it like on turn one.
Yeah, I think so, but so the way to kind of counter that is instead of focusing in on the middle box, what you do is you try to suppress down and focus on their other boxes that they're trying to pull, and you almost just let them have the middle box, grab your two, and then try to go get the other two. That's
Yeah.
generally how you counter that a little bit. Now the Pathfinders, they're tough because if they set up in a fire lane and you're trying to go after that other box or you're trying to get their box away from them, they can really dig in and cause some trouble.
Yeah, I mean, Luke Skywalker is amazing at stopping the grab, and Boba's pretty good at it. But what people don't mention is sometimes it comes down to that dice roll on who goes first.
Yep.
And that's scary. And you never want dice to decide something like that important. And then, yeah, you can do stuff like that, but it's always going to be terrain dependent. And if they kind of dug in and they got a great spot, you may just never get the box you need. So I'm not saying it's impossible. It's very possible to win those. You want something to be, like 60-40 in your edge, right? Even if it's 50-50, you'd rather take the 60-40. So that's all I'm saying is it's just something you have to think about now that you didn't before.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things you got to be prepared for and plan for. You're right. Let's see. So you're already in high command, so that's interesting. And do you have any expectations for high command or anything you've been prepping against or thinking about besides Pathfinder's Gin and recover the supplies?
No, I don't think things have changed that much. I mean, there's going to be some people who want to do something creative, and I saw for example, Han Solo and then repair RTs with the rotaries.
Yeah.
That can be scary. Han is a really good character. I think Flyboys, the Han and Luke, is also insane because Han's cards are so good, his command cards. But I just expect it to be harder competition. Really, at the end of the day, that's all. But if it's anything like what LVO was, I know I'll have a good time, and I'm just going to be happy to be there. I'm so happy that you guys are going to record there. It's sort of like, oh, I want to win, obviously, but I feel like if I lose, I can hang out with you guys and have a good time. And
Yeah, man.
I feel like I made so many friends at LVO. I can't wait to see them again.
That's the best part of big events for me.
Absolutely.
Getting to all the guys you met before.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And it was interesting. And like you guys are in the X-Wing circuit and stuff, but for me, I've never been to a competitive gaming tournament where I met so many people. I was like, oh man, I really like you. You know what I mean? And like almost by the end of each game and each round, it, like you said, I like made another friend. And I've never experienced anything like that before. So that was really cool.
Oh yeah. Even at LVO, I met two guys playing X-Wing that I kind of feel bad I didn't connect better. I'm not good at that stuff. I'm like the guy who my wife will want to take pictures, and I say, no, let's just enjoy ourselves. And then afterwards, I'm like, man, I kind of wish we took pictures. Or you ever play a Legion game and you get home, and you're like, no, I should have taken a picture of that board. It was so amazing.
Yes,
but you don't, and you hate yourself. So I wish these X-Wing guys. One of them though, he was a podcaster from like the DC area, and I've been listening to his podcast, and that was great conversations during the tournament. And then another guy, he gave me this really sweet list for extended scum. But it's just those moments, right, where you're having such great conversations. These people want to be there like you do, and you have the same mindset. And so yeah, and meeting Endless and all the guys, Orc and them, so great. So yeah, and I don't know if it's a tangent, but like at the X-Wing regional I just went to, there's this guy who's kind of infamous in my local area of New England. He's from New York, and I think I can't remember his first name. It's like DiMaggio, and he won the last regional I went to before this one. and he was sitting or playing right next to me, and I knew who he was, but I know he doesn't know who I am. And I was like, he's mentioned something about how he hates heroic. It hasn't done well for him. And if you don't know, heroic's a card where if you double blank on your dice, you can re-roll them.
It's my favorite card.
A lot of people make fun of it. I ran 5 A-wings with all heroic, right? So he saw my A-wings.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So we talked, and I was like, dude, don't talk bad about heroic, right?
Yeah.
So halfway through his game, he rolls double blank, and he kind of says heroic loudly, and I noticed. And I look at him and go, and he goes, okay, but I haven't actually done anything yet. So he picks up the dice, and he knows I'm watching, and he rolls them. He rolls double evade. And both of us scream so loud. We're like, yeah! And like, he just looks at me. We do like this crazy nerd high five. And it was like the best experience of the whole tournament. It was just like this moments like that, right? Where, oh man, it's just so fun, right? And I mean, that's what going to these events is all about, is the silly moments like that.
Agreed.
And he took no damage from the shot because of heroic. And I was like, hey, you don't need heroic to do anything else this game. You just did like 2 shield upgrades.
Yeah, about right 2. I was about to say 2 shield upgrades or 2 hull upgrades, right? Like,
right? That's like 8 points right there.
Yeah,
you got your money worth.
Yeah, I'm encouraged because LJ, who was the TO for LVO, even though he's not the full TO at Adepticon, he's been helping them and supporting them. Because he's actually playing in the last chance and stuff. So he can't TO obviously and play. And then Brendon, the marshal, he's actually going to be on later on the podcast. He's going to be there, and he's going to be the marshal at Adepticon too. So I fully expect it to go very similar to LVO as far as, you were talking about how well it was run and how cool everybody was and how laid back it was. I think it's going to be similar as far as the last chance qualifier. And I think even high command too. I just think high command might be up a notch just because it is, it's a little bit more competitive for Worlds. So it'd be interesting to see how the landscape changes when we get into the high command game on Saturday.
Well, we know there's some faces we're going to see going into the later rounds, right? Like if we don't see Kingsley 3-0, in the last round or something, I think we'll all be a little surprised. But,
agreed.
We know people like that put the time in. They're also going to be good sportsmen and, healthy competitors. So I'm not worried about it being up a notch, And
well, and they're all like, you're going to have Endless and Orchimedes are from Scoundrels. They're both going to be they're both in high command. Dash is going to be in the last chance qualifier working on his high command invite. Evan will be in the last chance qualifier working on his high command invite. So I think it's going to be a really good group of people.
I heard, is it 11 people now are going to get the high command invite?
Jesus.
Yeah, potentially more, right? Because so there's a number of people, apparently, I don't know for sure, but from my understanding is there's a number of people that already have high command invites that are going to be playing in the last chance qualifier. So let's say they made top 10, well, then it's going to get pushed out even more. So it could be up to 15, up to the top 16 could end up getting invites.
I feel like Fantasy Flight had no idea how many to give out, and then now at the last chance, it's like, oh crap, we got like 12 spots left. 12 people get to get in if they make a last chance. 55 people get in.
Some people dropped, so they don't want to have empty slots in high command, right? So every time someone drops,
new chance, baby.
They add another slot, right? And so if anyone's going to that last chance, it really is following. It's meeting the description. Last chance is certainly what's happening. So
and I'm excited. So the last chance qualifier, myself, Orchimedes, and Endless, we're going to be live streaming the whole event and talking about the games and the matchups and stuff, and that'll be really exciting. And then whoever's there that doesn't make last chance and doesn't make the high command, they'll be streaming with me the next day. So it'll be super fun, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, you get the kinks out of your system on that first day too, right? Because I'm sure you have some nerves on this. I'm like all making sure everything works. You get the internet figured out with that.
Yeah, that's my thing. I'm really scared about everything else. I'm like, you know what? I got backups for all of this stuff. We'll be okay. It's internet. Internet is live or die, right? So
Well, Jay, not to plug Google Fi, but if we go over 6 gigs, it goes unlimited on my phone, so we can just do it from my phone if things get real bad.
Oh, snap! Yeah, we might have to do that.
They just like look at my data bill, like, what the hell is this guy doing?
Yeah, I was like, oh man, we're gonna have to tether a phone if this goes bad.
It's been done. Gold Squadron did a lot of over the phone streams before.
Yeah, and then the other neat thing is, so Thursday, Fantasy Flight is doing, they're having like a town hall or whatever, and they're going to be talking about some new stuff coming out and doing question answer type stuff. Alex Davey will be there, and so we're going to actually be streaming that as well, so people at home can watch it and see what happens. So that'll be exciting too.
That's what I'm really excited about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a prediction what you think you're going to see?
Oh yeah, go ahead. What do you think, Doug? What do you think we're going to see? Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
I'll start it off. Clone box. I think the box will be the new Star Set will be announced.
Yeah, we have to think clones are coming, right?
Yeah.
It came to X-Wing officially this week, so it's only a matter of time.
I wonder if they're going to tease it. They love Gen Con though, right? That's where they want to like launch it, but
they do. But with the official like that special Vulture being released at Adepticon, it makes me think that maybe, and then the fact that you can get the tank and the speeder early at Adepticon, makes me think that this is going to be where they put their miniature stuff, and then Gen Con's going to be everything else they do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but does that mean that they announce it here and then we have to wait a full year?
Could be.
Actually be released?
Well, they already announced it. So they already said Clone Wars was coming to Legion.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess is if they talk Clone Wars, is like Evan said, they'll show you the box. It'd be like, it's going to be available at Gen Con or at the end of the summer or something, so.
Wasn't your interview with the developer, Luke, was it? He mentioned that he was busy playing with like, clone troopers or something, right? He
said an undisclosed trooper he could not tell us about what he actually said.
Well, no, maybe it wasn't that interview, but he definitely said to someone after, maybe it was on the other interview. I don't know, but one of them said, I have to remember, his words were like, I have to remember what's going on in Legion because I've been busy playing with like Jedis and clones.
No, that wasn't on ours.
I have to try to remember what
that's interesting. Yeah, maybe it was Outriders because I know they interviewed him too.
It might have been then. Yeah, he said that 100%.
Yeah, because so on ours, he teased whatever. So you know how we just got the veterans and the Tauntauns? So he teased whatever the Empire version of that is going to be, that's going to be announced, because he said, we asked him what list he's been playing, and he said he was playing Krennic, Death Troopers, 3 E-Webs, and then 6 units he couldn't tell us about. And so I was like, whoa. So.
Yeah, it makes sense it'll be core because they just showed us that new core for Rebels. So.
Yep. But all right. Well, I think that'll wrap this segment up. Is there anything else you want to cover, Doug, before we stop?
I mean, a bunch of random topics. I just like to say I do listen to your podcast, everyone. I drive an hour to work, so I just love this stuff. I eat it up.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Thank you so much for what you do. You both are great. Well, both of you and
not you, Nick.
No, I deserve it. I walked away.
But all right, cool. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that was Doug. He's cool. I like him.
That's cool, dude.
Looking forward to meeting him.
Yeah, he go ahead.
Because I was just asked because I have not met him yet in person.
Yeah, so the funny thing was, so we would plan to meet at LVO, and I was like, it was just so hectic and so much going on. And then like that guy I played second round, played him first round. And he was like, oh, I just played Sploosh. And I'm like, oh, where is he? And he's like, oh, I don't know. He's on the other end or something. You know what I mean? And I was like, I got to meet him. Because most of these people you end up just meeting over on, especially on Discord, it's tough because you don't even get their real name, and you're just going, wait, who are you?
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So, okay. So let's keep it on the Adepticon topic. So Nick, I'm going to start with you. What are you looking forward to at Adepticon?
So let's start with originally I was not going to go.
Yeah.
I had stopped playing And I was just like, well, there's no reason for me to go. But then I decided it's just like I still enjoy miniature gaming, like from a distance, because that's always been my thing. It's just like miniature games are awesome, and I like to look at them, and then I sit down and play them, and it's just like this is too much for me. And that's sort of the experience I had with Legion, but on a much lesser scale, because Legion is much better about that. But I was just like, I still would love to go around this convention and just check out what's going on, maybe learn some games. And then I heard that Keyforge is going to be there. And then further down the line, I heard that the Vault Tour is going to be there. So I'm going to try and jump in on that. It may not work out. We might have stuff to do with the stream. Well, you might need me for the stream for other stuff. I also I wouldn't expect to do well. I have not gone hard in on this game like I know a lot of people have. Like I have 2 decent decks, but nothing insane. But it would be nice. It would be really cool just to experience it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, listen, man, I don't get me wrong, I am loving that we're getting the stream and everything, but man, I'm like hearing Doug talk about the play it and hearing you about going over to Keyforge. I'm just like, oh man.
Yeah, because conventions are just great. They're just great to just be there without an agenda and to just wander around and be like, that looks cool. I'm going to go in that direction. And I'm also really hoping that they have like an artist alley, like some have, because
AdeptiCon definitely does. That's where all the golden and demon brush stuff goes.
Because PAX Unplugged did not. And I was disappointed because one of my things, like I don't buy keychains for souvenirs. I don't buy t-shirts. I go when I find some piece of artwork, and that's what I buy from a convention. And then it goes on my wall and it's mine forever. And it's just like, I got that at this convention. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I'll say, like, for anybody out there, I know we've talked about Keyforge a few times, and Nick and I have another podcast, Crunching Chaos, where we talk Keyforge. And I'll say my favorite thing at PAX Unplugged, it was crazy how much fun I had with Keyforge there. Like, those Keyforge games, like, that was some of the most fun I had at that tournament.
Yeah, those were insane. The game is so casual and low key. I don't know how a Vault Tour would be, which is why I'm kind of curious if like you just have hardcore gamers or it still keeps that sort of that casual, everybody's here still having fun mentality. Like you guys were describing with Doug at LVO. Like, is it the same or is it more cutthroat?
No, yeah, and it'd be interesting to see what the Vault Tour was. But like, so you played Keyforge at PAX, so that's how LVO was for Legion. Like everyone was just kind of cool, and like I said, like there was even a couple games where like both of us were like, "Oh shoot, I don't know what just happened there," you know, because like by round 4, you're like Doug said, like I felt like that in round 4 too. Like I felt drunk, and I was just like, "Oh my god, I can't." Like I don't even know what just happened. And then the other guy, Nathan, was like, "Oh, I don't. Maybe that's what happened." Like, and both of us were like, "Oh my god!" And then we were just like, "Okay." Just roll the dice, and then that's what happened. You know what I mean? Like, because but everybody was so cool there, and it was super laid back, and it's interesting because my only experience with competitive gaming has been Magic, and that is not laid back. Only on Friday nights, you know. But other than that,
not even on Friday nights, depending on what you're playing and who your group is. Like Magic is super cutthroat. I mean, I'm curious. Is what it's like to play at like a higher level major tournament, if like people are still serious but like cool, or you get a lot of like shade being thrown around, which is what happens at like the lower levels.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. What about you, Evan? What are you looking forward to? Well, you're playing right?
Oh man, like I'm excited to be able to get the exclusive stuff that they're doing. I think that's pretty cool. I'd like to go see who's playing X-Wing if I get a minute to go. If I know anybody. I'm excited to. Well, my Friday's going to be Legion, and then my Saturday is going to be either playing or streaming it. So Thursday is my one day to like Thursday morning anyway to go and check stuff out. But I don't know. It's I've never been to AdeptiCon. I've been to pretty much everything else at some point or another. So I've always been told it's the one to go to if you like miniatures. So I'm excited. I don't really like. I carry the Keyforge stuff around me as kind of like a hobby. But I don't really plan on playing any of the Vault Tour stuff. Though the Vault Tour stuff looks like it has some of the best prizes. I mean, who doesn't want a chair, right?
But yeah,
Like I say that half jokingly, half serious, or like the gaming table. Like I would love that stuff, and I'd love to see other games get that kind of prize support from FFG. But Keyforge just prints them money at this point, so they can kind of do whatever they want, right?
well, I'm curious if like other games will adopt their token online system rather than having like tickets. Is what I know Destiny does. I don't know exactly what X-Wing does.
Yeah, you win tickets at events. That's new. That's kind of a newer thing they've been doing. But no, man, it's gonna be fun. It's always fun just to meet the community again. This is the big one. After that, I think the next event's Nova, right? I think it's the next like actual big event.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the big one for a while. So I'm excited, man. It's always a good time to go to these things. I'm also stressed out because I still gotta finish painting a couple guys, double check everything I got, make sure I packed the right stuff.
Yeah.
When I went to the X-Wing event this past weekend, I got up there and I thought I forgot all my cards, like my actual cards for my ships. I put them in a pocket I never put them in, so I had to rebuy the stuff. And then as I took it out, I found them, and it was just bad. It was bad. Everything was bad. Started that tournament on a real bad note. So I'm just trying to get everything in. I've been so like strung out trying to get everything ready for all these different things. So hopefully once the crescendo of Adepticon hits, everything will feel like all this effort and frustration and work and energy will feel worth it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I you got the gaming and the painting, and I know like Dash and Orc were stressed out about their painting and stuff for Adepticon. Honestly, I'm bringing my stuff, but I'm not playing. So my big stress is just, okay, let's make sure all the equipment works. Let's make sure that
man.
Like a lot of people,
I get that, like, right, because we haven't even this is gonna be our first time really doing this, right?
Yeah. I mean, so it's just everybody out there, so you're not scared. It's not my first time streaming an event, but it's my first time streaming anything Legion with the setup that we're looking to set up. And
that's more what I meant.
Yeah, and it's gonna
first time like this caliber of event.
Yeah, and it's gonna be interesting too. And honestly, for all of you out there in podcast land, like I'd love to hear your feedback on this. So the first day, last chance qualifier, we're gonna try to do 2 tables, and we're going to try to go back and forth between the tables. Like if we see something exciting happen at like table 1, we'll switch over to table 1 and watch that for a little while. And then if there's a lull, we'll switch back over to table 2. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays on the stream. And if you guys are watching the stream at home while we're doing it, if it's not working, or you're not following, like send me a note on the Discord or on Facebook. And for the high command, we'll just do 1 table. So we're kind of experimenting the first day, because the problem is that, there's 60 people there playing, right? And I can't cover all the tables, but we can for sure cover 2 tables.
Yeah.
And so I don't know exactly how we're doing it, but we're going to try to do it ESPN style. Like if you're watching a golf game, where we'll go, okay, this is what's happening at table 2. And, and we'll switch over to table 2 and hopefully be able to get you guys enough information.
Oh man, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be great.
And plus, we're giving a lot of people who can't be there the chance to see the stuff, right?
That's what I'm hoping between the 2 days of streaming the events, and then hopefully we're gonna somehow stream the Fantasy Flight event. That's not really clear as to what they're gonna allow us access to, but we'll stream something.
Yeah.
And so, so between the 2, I'm hoping that we can communicate out to the world, people who can't make it, what's happening there.
Even if we're not allowed to stream the actual event, we can always just take live notes and then speak to it after, right?
Yeah, and so we're still negotiating that. So keep your ears open. We'll post it on the Facebook group and Reddit group. Once we get there, and to let everybody know what's happening. And then, so speaking of Adepticon, we actually have the Marshal, Brendon Franz, coming up. I'm going to do a little interview with him as well. So that'll be interesting to see things from his standpoint too. So unless you guys got something else, we can kick it over to that interview.
Man, I'm good. I'm excited.
Okay, so here's my interview with Brendon. Hey, everybody, I'm back, and I'm with Brendon Franz. How's it going, man?
Hey, pretty good.
So, Brendon, why don't you tell us who you are and why we should care?
What? It's funny you mentioned that, and I apologize if it's a little rough. This is only the second Legion podcast I've ever been on. Those great guys over at Critical X actually invited me on their podcast because nobody else would.
Who are those guys?
Exactly. So that's John Bushman, Nathan Willens, and myself, Brendon Franz, actually over there. So it's fun. But for anybody who doesn't know me, I am the Marshal and TO for AdeptiCon. I was the Marshal for LVO, and not just running the events themselves the day of. I actually worked with LJ, basically right hand working for about 6 months prepping LVO, as well as I got home from LVO and basically got hired on to AdeptiCon. So I'll be running all 3 days of events there, and planning that thoroughly in the process.
That's cool. So for somebody who may not know, what's the job of a marshal?
So per the tournament regulations, the marshal's really the high head judge for anybody who plays anything else. Marshal's really a Fantasy Flight term. But whenever there's a judge call to a table, if you don't like what the judge says, as long as that judge is not the marshal, you can basically escalate that to the marshal. The marshal is the end rule. If you don't like what the marshal says, unfortunately, that's kind of a tough situation. You play the game state as the marshal rules and keep going. The job is to be as quick and responsive. From an official play standpoint, the marshal's call is final, even if they are wrong and you prove it later. For that event, that call is final. I like to be a little bit more approachable than that. I do accept people calling me out, and I am the king of #show your work. So I will absolutely go back to the rule book and double check anything if somebody has a question and show them right where it came from.
Yeah. So from my perspective, I feel like some of the more tough calls for a marshal or a judge would be like line of sight issues. Like, how do you internally work those out if it's like something that's really close?
It's really tough. I actually use a number of different tools. So of course, knowing the rules is step one, but then step two is actually implementing them. And a number of things that we'll use laser line pointers. And there's nothing that stops a player from having their own. Sometimes you can kind of prevent the need for a judge call if you can resolve it at the table. But just because somebody pulls out a laser line on you at your table, like, you can still call a judge. There's no reason you can't ever do that. But one thing I like to do is you can actually use a range ruler and put it across, and then you can do a intersection with a laser line at the end of that range ruler if you go perpendicular to it. And that'll draw a nice clear line and see, are you over the base? Are you in range? Or is there terrain that's touching? You can use those lines to see if center to center there's any terrain, and see if that actually you're going to get cover for that squad or not. And then beyond that,
that's really interesting.
It's crazy. Yeah. Other than that, like a marshal, if necessary, I avoid it at all costs. You can pick terrain up. That's straight from Alex Davey himself. When I was asking, like, competitive play, how do you put a movement token down flat on the board when you're moving across a barricade? And he's like, well, you pick the barricade up if you need to. And I'm just like, as a 40K player, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, what? You want me to touch and move the terrain during a game? That's crazy.
I will say, as a player and someone who's played both, at LVO and local tournaments, it seems like this player base is much more open and like accepting not only of moving terrain, but like accidentally moving terrain too. And then be like, hey man, I bumped that with my hand. I'm just going to slide it back. And everyone's like, yeah, don't worry about it. That seems to be like a much more open, because I came from a Warhammer fantasy background, and it was like, oh my god, don't touch that. Like if you move the terrain or if your guy's not in the right place, big trouble.
It is, yeah. And so we actually had a couple of people call things that we put in the tournament addendum rules, which were designed to not supersede, but to augment and enhance what we already have from the tournament regulations. And basically, if two players agree on the game state, it's legal. And that is a big deal. So if a model gets bumped and it previously was right on that edge of being range 2, I mean, just the tip of it, and it gets bumped, like recreating that is going to be a pain in the butt. So trying to keep the play moving forward. If you guys already agreed that that's range 2, it's range 2. Keep playing, keep moving, put the mini as close as you can to where it was originally. And like you said, LVO was probably the most casual, very serious and competitive event I've ever been to.
Yeah.
My background is card game judging and stuff, and this was completely different than that. And in all the best ways. Everybody was very chill. Everybody was very forgiving. There were people commenting on player behavior during the top 6 final games at Las Vegas Open, and they were like, why did that happen? Why was that allowed? Why did the person allow them to take that move back? And it's just that's the culture that we have as a group right now, and I'm hoping that we can continue that at AdeptiCon.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. So in other parts of this podcast that we're on right now, we actually brought that up, that I think it was Nima, like my first game, like there was a couple things both of us did where we're like, whoa, I didn't mean to do that. And both of us were like, yeah, just walk it back. You know what I mean? Like, and it just, that seemed to be the kind of the feel of everyone that I played. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to ask you from like the martial judging standpoint, like it seemed super chill. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like there would have been any like really controversial judge calls at all. Like, I think most of it would just have been clarification.
There wasn't. And there was a couple of things that were brought to me after the event. And I'm not going to name any names, and I'm not going to give any situations. I had a couple of situations that were brought to my attention after the event, and some concerns from players. And unfortunately, after the event's over, I'm not really the marshal anymore.
Right.
I'm just Brendon, the community organizer. And
right.
and so what I can do is I can keep things like that in mind for future events. And I obviously I can't share that information with anyone.
Well, and it just, I can say something to this. So at PAX Unplugged, I helped TO that. And we had some problems there with a player that was, and this may be a completely separate topic, but I'm giving our listeners an example that was definitely cheating. And so we got called over I had a co-TO, and I was playing TOing because it was more of a casual event, so that, you know, that's okay. And so I came over for a judge call, and that person luckily called the other player on it in the actual game and was like, no, like you can't do that. So what I would encourage anybody who's listening, and this is kind of what Brendon was getting at, is if there's something sketchy or something that you think was misplayed or something you don't agree with, you need to call a judge immediately, because afterwards there's nothing anybody can do. And you're just going to be sour and mad at yourself at the end because you wish you had called that. And so I highly encourage you to call judges if anything's in question.
Yep. And actually, that you're 100% right. That's exactly where I was going with that. And the biggest concern is again, when that event's over, zero power to do anything to resolve it. All I can do is apologize and say, hey, you know, I'm sorry that happened. I wish you had called me, because I could have, you know, at least looked in the situation. And again, we're not saying that anybody is cheating or anybody is doing anything that's wrong. But if it borderlines over your level of comfort of, oh yeah, you can take that back, you need to call that judge. You need to get that third party, because I have no vested interest in who wins at the last chance qualifier. I don't care who wins high command. I want everybody to have a good time, and I want everybody to have a fair experience. And that is number one most important to me.
Yeah, and that's something we've been preaching on the podcast for a long time. And so I'd like it from your standpoint too, is we've always said it's not a negative to call a judge. It's just an impartial party because both of you are so invested in your own game and in you winning. The judge isn't there as like a principal, right? To come slap your hand. The judge is there to just help mediate. They're more like mediators than they are, enforcers of a certain viewpoint.
Exactly. And I will doubly reinforce that. It's not an insult to the other player calling a judge on them. It's just making sure, is the game fair? Are we playing this right? Did I understand this rule correctly? And I'll even take you one step further. At Adepticon, we're going to have 2 tiers of judges. I'm going to have Davis Kingsley. People know him as Kingsley online. He's our Invader League grand champion, I think.
2 times running. Yeah, he won.
Yeah.
He won twice. Yeah.
And it's my understanding he also helps out marshaling that as well. And so I've got him in my corner. I've got John Griffin of the Legion Academy as well. He's going to be helping out as well. He's a Chicago local there.
And for people who don't know, he went first place, right, at LVO. So he's...
Yep. So he has no vested interest on Friday's results either. So I have both of those guys for Friday's maximum firepower. My judge crew is still standing by. I'm basically scalping anybody who doesn't win on Friday, which obviously I hope I'm by myself. I hope everybody wins. But assuming that a few people that I've identified don't end up getting an invite for Saturday, I'm either tapping them for logistical duties or for judge duties on Saturday. Everybody's going to have something to do at Adepticon.
Yeah, I think we're going to be sharing some of that pool because if a lot of people end up that we had signed off for the live stream from Friday, if they end up winning, I'm going to be down people for the live stream on Saturday. So I'll probably be calling, like sharing with you, be like, okay, now go judge. Okay, now be on the stream. Okay, now go do this.
Exactly. And I guess that's one thing that we didn't really talk about, and I'll jump topics here for half a second is, I mentioned that LJ and I worked really closely on making Las Vegas Open happen. And I will never, ever, ever take away that level of work. But what I don't think can be expressed enough is all the other people who helped us out. Everybody who helped us set up Thursday night, everybody who helped us tear down under emergency duress on Friday night. That was such a stressful evening after a full day of events. We needed a lot of help, and everybody in that room got up and grabbed a box and helped haul things to the loading dock. I mean, and then just throughout the day, the people who helped out, Dave from Imperial Terrain was around getting, drinks and food for a lot of the staff. Emily, LJ's wife, was helping out, not just taking photos, but anything that was needed. If we needed to go down and talk to the frontline guys, she ran and helped out. As well as a lot of our podcast and blog community as well, all those content creators, not just sponsorship, but just generally helping out in any way possible. Like, that success is not solely on the shoulders of 1 or 2 people. It's on the shoulders of everybody who helped out putting that together. And I know who those people are, and I'm sure you know who those people are, and LJ knows who those people are, and you don't forget that, and you certainly don't forget to include people like that in the future. I mean, I think that's the result of why you have that live stream, is like we loved working with you guys, and you guys were so supportive. And so when Adepticon kind of fell into LJ and I's lap from an organizational standpoint, and I guess I should say that too, it's pretty well known, but LJ is kind of ghost writing the organization of Adepticon because he's playing on Friday.
Yeah.
But he and I have been full speed working on it with one of the board of directors from Adepticon. And we're in daily conversations with that guy. and the support from Adepticon has been amazing. So we have had a rocket strapped to our back for Adepticon, and
Yeah.
it's been a full month of just hard work that's going to pay off. But that's why I think LJ was like, oh, number one requested thing that we wanted from LVO was live streaming. And hey, look, we got you guys. Like, we got you guys space. And I'm really genuinely looking forward to what you guys are going to produce.
I am too, and I'm very scared. But
yeah, right.
like,
yeah, once that mic goes live, you're on the spot.
Oh, I know. Well, my biggest fear is the internet, to be quite honest with you.
Right.
And I've said that on a couple podcasts now, where I'm just like, guys, don't land base us like you did FFG, because I can't control the internet streaming. So we're going to do our best here. But it actually, you know what? I'm glad you're here, because here's an impromptu question for you. Because this came up off podcast, but I think it would be good to have on the podcast. So we're live streaming. We're going to be potentially watching 2 tables to 1 table, depending on how Friday goes and all that. If we see something on the live stream that we know is wrong, I have said that we're not going to interfere. Right. Because we're like, think of like, I've been comparing myself to the Tony Romo of Legion, where I'm just watching now and like going, oh, they're going to do X, Y, and Z. So it's not going to be up to us to call a judge. And so I guess I'm making that clear out to the streaming world, out to the podcast world here. I'm not going to make judge calls, and I'm not going to call Brendon or his team over if the other player doesn't call it.
That is actually a fantastic question. And I know that it's come up on previous X-Wing events. There's been like the chat will just blow up. And not only that, but if the judge just makes something that they find questionable, they'll just blow up and they'll be like, what is going on? However, I will go to the tournament regulations here for you and list that there are actually a number of roles. There's the organizer and there's the marshal, both of which mantles I'll be taking for Adepticon. We also have a judge, and we've kind of talked about those. There are 2 others that are listed in that documentation, though. Player, which we know what those are. Yep. But the last one here is spectator. And for anybody listening, let me go ahead and read this word for word for you. A spectator is any individual physically at the tournament. So physically at the tournament, that is unfortunately not people watching on chat, not actively engaging in another role. And in this case, I think role is defined as the people in this document. Spectators must not disturb an ongoing game and cannot provide any input or assistance to players during their games. So obviously, if you end up seeing a command hand or other information, you can't go, oh, well, you could get Boba Fett further if you go around the corner this way instead of the other direction. However, if a spectator believes they have witnessed a breach of the game rules in a game they are watching, other than a missed opportunity, so something you could have done but chose not to do, whether as an active decision or because you forgot. So we're talking about mandatory triggers here, like after I activate my unit, I must rally. I must perform that. He or she may bring it to the attention of a leader.
Okay. And so I would say from our perspective, unless we see some like blatant, I mean, at that point, it's going to be for everybody to see. But unless we see some blatant cheating, we're probably not going to get involved from a streamer standpoint.
And that could be intrusive in regards to, as we mentioned before, if 2 players have already agreed on a game state. I don't know what kind of audio you're going to have for their own interactions, but I imagine that would be kind of hard to keep up on. There may be something they've agreed on that is just simply not caught on audio or not figured out, and therefore you could be kind of stepping into an area that you shouldn't.
I would agree 100%. And I would say because, and like we were talking, so Friday, we're going to have 2 tables set up and we're going to try to cut between the 2. So like if there's a lull at one table or like a big something's happening at the other table, we'll try to cut over just because I think that's going to be the most interesting. But if that seems too much, we'll go to one table at high command. But yeah,
Sure.
I think for us, it's just we're not there to interfere on any level. We're there just to watch, just to spectate.
Right. Right. And that's good. I mean, everybody should have fun. And I hope this does not end up, an opportunity for the community to just reach out and go, oh my gosh, what are they doing at AdeptiCon? It should really be the opposite. It should be, oh my gosh, what are they doing at AdeptiCon? That looks so great.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I think with anything on the internet, right? I'm sure there's going to be some negative feedback, but hopefully we'll take whatever constructive criticism or feedback comes our way, and just for everybody listening, we're kind of pioneers in this as far as like LJ and Brendon and then ourselves streaming this. Like this is all newish. This is the first year. These are the real big tournaments. This is all, the meta's kind of starting to show a little bit, and like real players are starting to play the game now. And so it's very interesting on how everything's going. So like I would just like to put out there that, listen, we're doing the best that we can. Everyone's doing the best that they can. And so, yeah, there's going to be mistakes, and you got to let us have those mistakes, right? And what's that saying? They know you're pioneers by the arrows in your back. Like that's what's happening right now.
Exactly.
So,
and that's why I make a point to have the surveys after LVO, and I will have one posted for AdeptiCon. I do want that feedback. I want that constructive criticism, and I want to know what worked for you, what didn't work for you. And a great example of that, and one thing that maybe I didn't explain so much in my intro so well, is one of the biggest reasons I got this job in the first place was because of terrain. There was a lot of concern real early on about terrain in competitive play. And that's actually how I ended up meeting and finding LJ. I was like, I'm running tournaments locally here in Arizona with incredible scenic terrain, and the play experience there was super enjoyable. And I wanted to bring that to Legion competitively. And I happen to just be a guy who's really good with rules and happen to do that. But, I feel like there's a lot of people who are really good at rules. So I'm not special in that regard, and I'm not anybody bonus. But here, as a result of bringing this terrain, as a result of being good at these rules, I've also now been able to show, hey, I'm also kind of good at project management and coordinating this event and putting it together, which is why AdeptiCon picked me up, and why we're already talking LVO 2020. And spoiler alert, we're also kind of already talking AdeptiCon 2020.
Well, and I would say they're absolutely right too. And I'll sing your praise a little bit here as someone who was at LVO. That is one of the most well-run events I've ever been to. And I think it says something. I think that's why the community was so chill, because there was no stress, because we had all the information we needed.
I handled all the stress.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Brendon had all the stress on his shoulders. We literally met at LVO, and Brendon has no recollection of that at all.
I really don't know. I know that we talked for like, hi, I'm Brendon. Hi, I'm Jay. But man, that was.
And I don't blame you.
Some of it.
Like I totally get it, but it was just such a well-run event. Like, a lot of questions that I get locally for people who are going to be at Adepticon was, hey, like, did they tell you the time and stuff? I'm like, yes, they said, hey, you have X amount of time left, which is a huge thing. For people, because as you're playing, you don't always remember to like turn around and look at the clock, right? You should, but you don't always remember to. So it's nice that you guys were yelling out the time.
Don't block the TV.
Right. Oh, I got yelled at twice for that. Yeah. And so, it's like everything was run so well. I quite enjoyed my time. And I think that kind of lended to the community being so chill, because I think if you're not, from a community standpoint, if we're not worried about time or how the tournament's being run, and we can just focus on our games, that's when you're at a well-run tournament.
Yep. And I think that's for anybody who puts on not just a tournament or any show or presentation. is if you're not noticing the things that are going wrong, that means somebody else is working really hard to make that happen. And I won't pretend for a second that we did not have problem after problem after problem, but one of the biggest things that any organizer can do, and this is a shout out for anybody who's running a Rally Point qualifier or anything else, and we're out here to help you, but number one job of any organizer running any major event is just putting out fires. It's not, you can prep all day. We prep 6 months, right? And I have probably a list of a dozen things that went wrong both the day before and the day of and after at Las Vegas Open. But if we're doing it right, you don't see that. And as a player, you're never going to see that. And that's just part of showmanship. So for anybody who's thinking about, hey, can I do this? Can I do it? If you're having problems, that's normal. The question is, how well can you adapt to that, and how well can you fix it as it happens?
Well, yeah, and I would say that's with anything, like, right? Like, we have problems with the podcasts all the time, but our audience doesn't know about it because we had plans, and hopefully that happens with the stream too. Is I'm sure there's going to be stuff that's going to go wrong. I just got a plan, and hopefully have backup plans that cover whatever goes wrong, because it's going to happen.
Real talk life advice. Problem solving and resilience.
Yeah, right. There will always be problems. You just need to have plan B and C for when they come up. That's all it is.
Sometimes preparation H, because preparations A through G didn't work.
That's right. So talking about preparation H, let's talk about your new podcast.
Oh my gosh. Oh man.
You like that segue?
Oh.
Boom.
That's rough. So yeah, we teased. Well, we kind of teased it in the beginning of this podcast here. Las Vegas Open happened, and nobody wanted to talk to me on their podcasts. So
that is true.
I figured I'd make my own, and then somebody'd have to listen to me.
Yeah. Now look, you're on this one. See what happened?
Yeah, I know, it's amazing. I'm a podcaster, and suddenly everybody wants to listen to me. No, we put together Critical X with the Phoenix crew there. That's John Bushman, also known as Bushfax, Nathan Wiles Willens, and myself over there, the king of hashtag show your work. Please, if you're answering or asking questions, show what you're talking about. But we put it together. We're kind of a salty and rowdy crew personally, and it's fun. We tease each other just as much as we tease others. But we kind of were getting a little bit of a reputation of, I'll just say it, trolls in a little bit of a way.
You don't say.
And, saying things that other people won't say. And so we kind of decided, you know what, it'd sound kind of cool if we had a microphone in front of some of this. And so we just kind of want to give a different perspective, with respect to the other content creators that are out there. We enjoy a lot of the content and are totally subscribers and fans of the other content. But we're like, we don't always agree with everybody, and we don't always have the same opinion. So maybe we should put ours out there as a contrary opinion. And not that we won't agree with people from time to time, but maybe we should give our voice out there too, for maybe other people that feel that way as well. And they just are like, I see where those guys are coming from, but I don't agree with it. And maybe just give some different perspective. And shout out to my buddy Nathan. He put together a segment that is entirely his. Nathan is a uber Star Wars nerd. And he put together a segment where basically we're talking about the cards in Legion and how that fits into the lore and how that fits into actual Star Wars. So for those of you who are either big Star Wars nerds or maybe just want to learn more about what you're playing with, Nathan basically writes that segment himself, and writes is a loose term. But he leads it, and that is probably what got the most praise on the podcast. That said, we got a lot of negative feedback too, so we listened to that as well.
Well, and I'll say this. So it's funny because when you were saying like you guys have a different take, and for our listeners, like, go listen to them. If you don't like it, that's fine. Just listen to something else, or you know what I mean. Like, you're not going to like all these podcasts. It's just it's the same as lists in Legion, right? Like, so, and I just want to equate this, like most people are running Veer's Boba or Wonder Twins, and they'll tell you that's the best list, and you can't win with any other list. And then, you know, like myself and Nathan at LVO, I was running a 12 activation Veer's list with 2 E-webs, and, you know, Nathan was running, what was it, 13 activations with 3 E-webs.
Yeah.
And so, and, you know, I mean, he didn't beat me, but he did all right. No.
Right?
But
Yeah. Yep.
But you know what I mean? Like every list is different. Every podcast is different, which means there's going to be all these point of views that aren't wrong. They're just different, and they can all win and they can all be right at the same time. Like this isn't a black and white kind of game. And so none of our podcasts should be black and white.
I agree.
Content in general.
I agree. And I'm very much the and this isn't any game I play. Anybody who knows me, I'm a gamer. You know, World of Warcraft, Galaxy of Heroes. I'm waiting for Darth Revan event to launch here in about 45 minutes from the time of this recording. You know, I play role-playing games. I play competitive video games online. Not a lot of match-based stuff, but even Legion, anything like that, there is the meta, right? And I like to think, what is the next meta, right? It's not, I don't care what's good right now. What's going to beat that? And how can I beat that? So just because, you know, everybody is running this list, this cookie cutter list, right? What is the counter to that? And I understand that sometimes that's not always an easy answer. And sometimes we might not find it until we get a new release. But in the meantime, always trying to push what is next, right? And so at LVO, we had a major event. The competition level, I think, was probably higher than we've ever seen for a Legion event to date. And I think realistically, AdeptiCon is going to be that next step. As much as I didn't want to admit it when I was running LVO, I wanted LVO to be the number one best event of the year. But now I'm involved with AdeptiCon too, and now I want that to be the best event of the year.
Yeah.
I think what we're going to see is this shakeout of these 32 players on Saturday who have all at one level or another proven themselves to the Legion community as, hey, this is a person who can win. And not to say that there aren't other people who can't win, or people who just through just a tough pairing won't shake out for Saturday. Because there are those people too. And to them, I say, keep trying and work hard, because just because you didn't get this event, you'll get the next one. Always try for that. But
like I say,
we're going to develop a meta.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's still a dice game, man. Like,
oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you get the best laid plans, right? Like, and I think I've said it on a podcast before where it's just like, screw math, because it's like, I can set this all up. I can prepare for everything, but then I can still roll all blanks. Like it happens.
My opponent and I this past Saturday had 2 Bobas, both heavy cover, both range one of each other for 2 to 3 turns. And within firing range of multiple DLT units and an ATST, and just soak after soak. We're just trading shots. We had probably a dozen suppression tokens collectively over the turns. I mean, it was just nonsense. I had one point I rolled 6 out of 6, blocked everything.
Oh my God.
And so, yeah, I mean, there's spikes where that'll happen. And then the next game, my Boba's dead the first time a Stormtrooper squad shoots at him.
Yeah.
You know, so in a game like this in Legion where you're rolling so few dice, and I say that compared to 40K where you're rolling 200 Orc Boy shots or something, you know, you're going to have spikes in dice that go one way or the other. Those average rolls are not as average. Because things just swing so heavily.
Well, and here's my problem, right? Is that average roll, and this is Jeff Goldblum's character in Jurassic Park, right? Like that average roll is based on perfect conditions, but like if there's a variation in the table, or like you're not getting average rolls. That never happens. Like it just,
unless you're using the dice app.
Which, hey, I was actually going to bring that up. Perfect segue. Good job. You are a podcaster. Look at you.
Right?
So everybody knows the app is legal.
Yep.
So if you want to
I'm
use...
the only person I know who uses it, by the way. I don't know anybody else who uses it.
I've used it a couple times, and I've been encouraging people locally, like, hey, if you feel like your dice are betraying you, just go grab the app. Like, it's perfectly legal in the tournament. So anybody listening who's going to be at AdeptiCon or any other tournament, FFG has an app. It's $4 or something like that, or $2. I don't remember what it is. But
yeah, I paid like $5 like 9 years ago when X-Wing came out, and they put all their games on it.
Yeah. So go buy it, and you can use that at the tournament if you feel like your dice aren't rolling well. The other thing, too, to remember in the rules, if you feel like your opponent's dice are really hot, you're allowed to use their dice as well. Yep. You can ask to use their dice to roll.
Let's talk a little bit about acceptable behavior, though. Okay. If you are going to use the dice app, here are my expectations of you as the marshal. I want the app to be nice and in the middle of the table. I want you telling your opponent, what are you rolling? So I've got 3 red dice and 4 attack dice because I have 4 stormtroopers and a DLT there. I'm going to be rolling that and say it in a way that is kind of a question, so that your opponent understands you're confirming with them. And that kind of goes back to the behaviors that we talked about in our tournament addendum there. Mm-hmm. Always be checking with your opponent to make sure that they understand what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And be very clear and very pronounced. There's a nice big dice button in the top of the corner of that app. Before you hit it, make sure your opponent is watching that you're hitting it. I don't want to get called over because the opponent did not see it. And I don't want to be called over because they feel like you're being shady because you're keeping your phone on your side of the table, and that you're trying to maybe obscure your phone from your opponent. So make sure that they can see what you're doing and that it's very clear. And then one of the discipline things that I think the Scoundrels talked about it on one of their podcasts. Do not modify your dice. If you have surges, leave those surges on there. If I'm called over, I want to see those surges so that I understand what was originally rolled, not what you converted at some point. I can't revert the game state nearly as well without it.
And this is, from my standpoint, this is something I found too, is if you're rolling, not everybody has dice trays. So sometimes people roll right on the table, or like sometimes I've rolled right on the table, like you're getting worked up and you're like, okay, I'm just going to roll. If something is under or near a piece of terrain, I hold my hands up and I point at it to my opponent and I go, do you want to look? We'll both look so we can see what it is before I pull it out of there.
Sure. Yep.
You know what I mean?
Think that's a great behavior. And so what I'm saying for the phone should realistically apply to dice trays and anything else you're doing. Never do anything that would give your opponent the impression that you're obscuring what you're doing. And again, I say this in the most casual of ways. Like, I'm not here to be a jerk and I'm not here to do it. But don't give your opponent the impression that you might be doing something underhanded. Just be very open and honest and casual. I love I put my hands up. Like, yeah, sure. Like whatever you need to do to express to your opponent, oh man, like take a look at this. We should be having fun. We should be having a good time, while also trying to stab each other in the back.
Well, and I think, it sounds silly, but I've been under this impression, and this is how I try to practice, is you want to go over the top in declaring actions and declaring things, or that's why I put my hands up, because it's like, look, I'm not touching it. I want you to look at it. Like, it's very clear indications of what's happening here, so that there is no misinterpreting what just happened. You just go, hey, or like cocked die. That's always a weird one. And always. So, you go to your opponent, you go, that's cocked. What do you want to do? And if you guys can't make a decision that seems reasonable to both parties, you call a judge. Don't touch the die, leave it there, and be like, judge call,
Yep. And I feel like that's, again, that game state thing. Like, if you're not comfortable with the cocked die, speak up. If you are comfortable with the cocked die, don't speak up. But if you end up with a cock die that you approve and then your opponent doesn't later on, man, cut them off from freebies. Don't let somebody take advantage of you. And I'm not saying somebody will, but you know, stand up for yourself in that regard. Like I definitely have no problems allowing an opponent. Somebody wanted to pull the strings with a stormtrooper squad to make some frags and flamethrowers on Saturday, after they had already declared that they were going to do a dodge, and I was starting to activate my first unit. And I was just like, you know what? Like, we're having a fun tournament here. This is really what that list was built to do, obviously. And I'm just like, you know what? Go ahead and do it. Like, obviously it was just a small tournament and not too big of a deal, but for me as the victim there, and I did pick up a full squad of stormtroopers gone. You know, that's what his list was designed to do. I allowed it. I'm not telling you to allow that at LV or at the maximum firepower or high command. That's a much more premier event. And I don't expect people to be that forgiving. But that's an extreme of how forgiving I've been willing to be before.
Well, and I agree. Like, it's up to you personally how far you want to let it go and what your spirit of the game is. The other thing I would say is, I'm sure for some people, like Brendon, you and I don't think we have this problem, but I'm sure socially it's hard for some people to question other people on something. And so in that regard, I would say just hold up your hand for a judge and just say, hey, I don't know enough about this, and just try to play it cool. And because maybe socially you're not as comfortable confronting someone, so have the judge do it for you. That's why they're there.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going against somebody, you know, and there could be a celebrity factor. We're going to have some big community names there too.
That's true.
You know, like John Bushman or Nathan Willens, those crazy podcasters. You know, if you're playing one of those guys, you know, and don't let their celebrity intimidate you, and don't let them you know, intimidate you with their grumpy online personas, because they're both actually pretty cool guys in person. But don't just let anybody walk over you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's Joe Steve that isn't in it, or if it's Jay Shalansky. Did I pronounce that right? I got that.
Yeah,
right?
you did a good job. Yeah, thanks.
Yes. You know, just you know, fair and fun for everybody. That's the whole goal.
Well, good news for everyone. I won't be bullying anyone except for on stream. So
right. Good job.
Yeah, I would say too. Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, if you that's a good point. The famous quote unquote Legion famous thing, because if you feel like
hashtag Legion famous,
I like that. If you feel like something's wrong, but you're playing someone that you think knows more about the game, but you still think it's wrong, it's okay for you or them to be wrong. Just call a judge over, and then you'll know for sure what it actually is. So, you know, they may be right, and, you know, they're not going to I think any of the content creators or any of the quote unquote known people, I think, would be very fine with you calling over a judge and saying, I don't understand what's happening here. Can you, you know, this doesn't seem right.
I'll take that another level. So for any of my judges, right, if you don't like their call, or even if you just really want a marshal to weigh in on the situation, you're allowed to appeal it. And I have been a regular judge before in various multiple events, and I have been appealed at highly competitive events. And you know what? One of the most satisfying things as a judge is to feel, especially when you're a newer event judge, is getting appealed, which, I mean, kind of sucks. But getting appealed and then being upheld by the marshal, by the head judge. So your ruling on the field that you originally made was the correct one. So there is a level of satisfaction there. And while I'm not perfect, the number of appeals that I've had that have been overturned is 0. So as far as times that stuff's happened, so it's a good feeling. It really is.
And to kind of add on to that, no one is taking anything. If you call a judge or you appeal a judge, no one's taking that personal. Like, no one.
Or they shouldn't be.
Right. And if they are, I was going to say, if they are, they're a jerk. But like, any normal human is like, yeah, no worries, call a judge. And if you like approach it and you're like, hey, I don't know enough about this, or this doesn't make sense to me, I'm going to call a judge because I just want to see what the judge says about this.
I'll put it this way, plain as day for everybody. Kingsley v. Freeman at Las Vegas Open, I got a judge call, right?
Yeah.
The two people that I don't think anybody would expect would need a judge to come over to their table called a judge over. It happens. Yeah. So, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. And sometimes you just need that third party who doesn't have a vested interest in the event to make the call for you.
Agreed. 100%. All right, man. Well, I think that'll wrap it up. You got anything else you want to talk about or plug or?
No, not really. I obviously thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate that. I know we tease and stuff, but
I felt bullied into it. No.
Right. Yeah. Good. That means it was working. Glad to be here. Look forward to seeing you in Chicago here in about 3 or 4 days from this recording.
Oh, yeah.
And shout out to anybody who's listening. I'm sure, Jay, you're the same way. It is a busy event. We're both going to have a million things going, but please stop me, even for if it's a 2 to 20-second conversation of give me your name, give me where you're from, where I might know you from. Say hi. It's a very busy event, and we're still. I'll definitely take the time to say hey, and at the very least, I want to be approachable. So
agreed.
Come say hi.
And I would say I'll say 99.9999% of the community members are all approachable. So
I can't think of one who isn't, to be honest.
That's why I was going to say most, but then I was like, well, I don't know any that aren't. So yeah, everybody's approachable. Just come say hi. Now, like if I'm in the middle of the stream, don't come say hi. Or if Brendon's in the middle of judging, clearly don't say hi. But any other time.
Yep. Find us at a good point that seems approachable and definitely say hi. And if there's a big delay, definitely sit down. We'd love to chat with you.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on.
All right. See you later.
Yeah, so that was Brendon, and that's what's going on with him at AdeptiCon. So looking forward to seeing anybody who's going to be there, and hopefully you guys enjoy the streams. And if you have any questions for us, or you want to reach out and tell us how we're doing, please email us, the Fifth Trooper Podcast at gmail.com. Reach out on Facebook or on the Discord channel.
Always love to hear feedback either way, right?
Yep. All right. Well, for those of you that'll be there, we'll see you in AdeptiCon. Come say hi, preferably while I'm not live on stream, but any other time. And and thanks for being on, guys. And this will be interesting this week. So
excellent.
It is going to be interesting.
All right. Well, we'll see you in a couple days at the AdeptiCon. You'll see us on stream. Have a good couple days until then, everybody.
Have a good one, guys. Stay rad.
Take it easy, everybody.
Join us next week for another edition of the Fifth Trooper Podcast.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.